Courage Culture Commentary.
Even paying attention to any of this stuff?
Black Lives Matter crap. The racial stuff is difficult. It's very difficult for me because I feel like it's such an important issue. We lost so much ground in the last decade. It's very upsetting to me because it just doesn't have to be the way it is, and we're putting ourselves back in a position that we don't need to be in. I mean, what a beautiful thing we have in America. To go backwards is just, yes, of course, sometimes people are going to say stuff and people are going to behave in a way that's not exactly polite, but it's not actual racism. But now we're starting to see actual racism, and it's coming from, just like the homosexual lobby, it's coming from minorities who at one point in time actually experienced racism, and now they're the ones being racist.
I see the fingerprints of this from so far away, what is interesting is obviously as a believer you see just the evil on all this and the supernatural aspect of all this, and what it does is it just destroys and it fills hearts with hate and all that. But I also see on just a political level, it just infuriates me. One, because it seems so strategic, and they're just willing to sacrifice this for the power that it yields them, and it is a
you can really take a lot of power when you're busy dividing. I mean, I know it's cliche at this point, but get people fighting amongst each other. If you look at intellectually dishonest practices by the Democrat progressives, and you look at it across the board, they have the same thing that they do every time. But you figure at some point, a whole culture, a whole ethnic group of people would wake up to this trick, which is, this is the group of people that have been in power in your neighborhood, in your communities, now exactly. In the country for the last 8 years, and they're still playing the game of it's somebody else's fault. Or, I mean, you're not really looking close enough to see, wait a second, you're the one in charge. You're the one that promised all this racist stuff would go away and all this racial stuff would go away. Now what you're actually doing is you're actually saying, people don't like me not because of what I'm doing, but because of the color of my skin, and it's the same thing with you. It's not the problems in your community, it's the color of your skin that's the issue.
It's so exactly like you said, and I get so frustrated with this, not just in the racial realm, but in like every political realm. We've rendered ourselves completely at sea without an anchor in this sense. There doesn't seem to be any way to self-correct from this. It's because of a weird form of branding. It's because of this strange form of branding where everything that seems or is associated in any way with the Republican Party is immediately and completely dismissed. Normally, like the things you're saying, they've been in power, right? They've been in power of the cities, they've been in power of the purse, they've been in power of the schools, they've been in power of the infrastructure that's fallen apart, specifically in Detroit and Chicago. They're in charge of these cities where hundreds of kids lose their lives every year on the streets of Chicago. But there can't be self-correction because the branding is so powerful that anything to do with the Republican Party is immediately dismissed. So they just keep going around the laps over and over like a NASCAR, over and over and over, because somehow both the media, academia, all the megaphones of influence have just done such a wonderful job of branding.
They actually have, and we have such a lazy society that nobody's going to take the time to figure it out. Nobody's going to peel back more than one layer. I mean, I was listening to the radio today, and some guy called in, and he's like, you're talking about Black Lives Matter. Well, what about the KKK? The KKK is still real active, and there's been 90 lynchings in the last 3 years in the United States. And the host was like, okay, that's just completely ridiculous. Where did you read it? I read it somewhere on the Internet. Well, this is the problem, because you hear one thing one time, and you compare the KKK in the United States to ISIS and Black Lives Matter, you haven't done any research, because that's just falls flat on its face away from any logic or any truth, but it doesn't matter. All that matters is that the media only tells stories that fit their narrative, that they just pound this drum over and over again, and we have this really lazy constituency that just buys it.
I don't even need to slay the whole dragon at once. Like, I really don't. I don't need to have everything I want. I don't need people to agree with me. But I have to believe that there's some way to self-correct some of this stuff. You know what I mean? I have to believe that we can make moves and steps forward. And I am really losing hope in our ability to do that. And I think that's really getting to me on a psychological level. I don't think that there's anything that is offered me, not democracy, not discourse, not debate. There's no rudder on the ship, in other words. There is no way to steer it. Nobody cares about anything that's true. We sort of take sides, right? We don't even have any real discussions. And then whoever does a better job of branding, and of course that's going to be the people that have the media, they're just going to win. There's nothing else. Yeah. There's no other players in the game.
It took a long time for the fabric of society to mean, you watch these TV shows, the Wild West and the behavior, and just the way society was back then. This is America, 100 some odd years ago. And okay, you get civilized society, you get parts of the country that weren't so civilized. But overall, let's just say the last 100 years, we've had in America a pretty civilized society, a Judeo-Christian society, and that held us together, and that's where we gained so much prosperity from. Well, the last 40 years, 45 years, that's all been undone, and that's all been undone with such diligence,
yes.
ultimately by the enemy, but in such a clever, sneaky way, under the guise of liberation.
And progress.
You need to be free, just like in progress, just like in the Garden of Eden. You need to be liberated from this rule that you have hanging over your head.
Right.
But we, in a macro kind of way, we've had the same kind of thing happen. God's greatest gift to humanity since the dawn of time, this free country where you can be anything and do anything. Well, some countries that are a little more totalitarian would say, well, you've had so much freedom, that's the reason you've gone under. Not necessarily. We like you said, we have no rudder, so we've lost our way with all this freedom. The experiment would be, okay, mankind can clearly not govern itself because there's just so much sin in the world that we're not capable of living with this kind of freedom because we just flush it down the toilet.
Right.
So we put the yoke of indentured servitude and slavery right back on voluntarily, so we can have sex with a dude, or so we can be angry about not going to college for free, or not having the ability to kill small innocent children at a whim. You pick your poison as far as what that is.
When you say freedom, right, we emphasize that. So when I grew up, it was all freedom, liberty. America is about freedom, liberty, right? Sort of the enemy to democracy, or maybe the enemy of capitalism, certainly the enemy of the West would say. You guys are drowning in an excess of freedom, right? Which clearly isn't true. But what I would say is you're free. You have morals as your guidance to maneuver that freedom, right? Choices.
Yeah, that's what you instill slowly over time.
So if you think about this, when the World War II vets came back, what they did to their children is they said freedom, 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 freedom. But because they didn't want to mold them and because they didn't want to tell them no, they forgot to tell the most important part, which is the morality inside of that is a secret ingredient of freedom. The only reason you can have liberty, the only reason you can have freedom without a dictatorship is because you morally please yourself within. Well, they forgot to emphasize that. And so then it's just freedom, 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 freedom. And yes, maybe your excesses and your love for possessions and your love for passions and all these things that you see, that they will swallow you up in a sea of choices unless, and free people can only work with a God-centered environment. And the fact that they were able to pull that rug or pull that ingredient out of the recipe is exactly how we find ourselves. No matter what the situation, no matter what the conversation, I can't get around the fact that I don't see any self-correction. I don't know what can be done by wise or good men and women to self-correct. It certainly isn't debate. It certainly isn't citing history. It's not even telling a person that we've been here for the last 7.5 years, and how does it make sense to re-up the subscription? So
you would have figured if something like that was going to work, that after the first 4 years and how terrible that went, they would have self-corrected.
So
they did another way.
What's left to us then?
I have no idea. You got me. It would require me to give society much more credit than I'm willing to do at this point. As far as I'm concerned, God extended as much grace as He could, and we did what we always do, which is
scorn it.
Okay, well now we have two choices. We have crappy and we have super horrible crappy. What are we going to pick? I don't put it past us in the slightest way to pick the worst of the two choices. And I actually have come to believe that one choice would be significantly worse than the other choice. I haven't been screaming from the mountaintops about the lesser of two evils. I haven't said that. This is a place we find ourselves in where we could pick something that continues to have a circle down the toilet, the drain in the toilet, or we could possibly, I don't know, clog it up enough to buy ourselves a little time. I don't think we will. I think Hillary will be the president, but that's just because we're just so far gone. I mean, is it a waste of our time to pray for this nation, to try to get this nation to turn around? We do our parts in our homes. And the conclusion I came to is, yes, you of course pray for your nation. Yes, you look throughout all the Old Testament, and Israel was just a mess. Very much like us. God still found it in His heart to find big mercies and small mercies, and You know, if you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, just how many people God was willing to take, 5 people or whatever it was, 10 people. I mean, God is gracious, and he has lots of mercy. God will show us mercy, but that doesn't mean he'll give us a good Christian leader. He's going to give us the leader we deserve, just like he did to Israel. Okay, you want a king? I'll give you a piece of crap king.
We'll continue to moan under that, just like Israel did. We'll continue to moan under that.
It is great that we have a God who we know his character, because no matter what happens down here, we know that God's character is pure and faithful and loving to God's children, and especially the country founded on the Bible and the principles in the Bible, and the people that found this country knew that, and we've rejected that. We have our own president saying this is not a Christian nation.
I suppose when something is so rare, it's just a little bit more painful when it goes. So many of us who notice it, we notice how rare it is, and the people around us that don't will someday come to realize that. And it's so painful to be one of the people that knows it as it's slipping away. You see this beautiful glass menagerie or something, and you're just seeing like a sledgehammer just right through it, and you know you can't put those pieces back together, and everybody else is like, you know, just dazed and confused.
They've been taught systematically, piece by piece, that every single part that went into
is evil.
That beautiful vase is evil. Yeah, the people that made it were evil. The materials they mined it from.
Everything goes back to Genesis 1 through 3, man. I'm serious. It's just the lie, the whispering in the ear, that up is down, down is up, wrong is right. And here we are. I mean, it's really nothing new under the sun. I mean, it's really
we're just exchanging a sovereign, loving God for an evil, hateful master, Satan, and ourselves. And how horrible of a master are we to ourselves? I mean, every day I'm seeing just the mess of everybody's lives without the outside stuff. You can't help what other people do. You can't help if you get sick. You can't help if people you love die. This is just consequences of your bad decisions. What messes, Jerry Springer-style messes you make of your life, and you want yourself to be in charge rather than just give your life over to somebody who loves you.